they would have never walked away from the job if they had the choice. If they had the choice, they would have stayed. There's a lot of clients of mine who've ended up getting laid off and then they end up starting their own business after. And they've always wanted to start their own business, but they didn't have the courage to leave the job. So sometimes the universe, the light, the source, whatever it is that you believe in, God, whatever word you use, sometimes has to pull us out of situations in order to redirect us. Welcome to the Chingona Revolution podcast, where we will bring out your inner badass Latina, overcome self-doubt, help you gain clarity, and pave your own path, all while leading with courage. I am your host, Latina coach and speaker, Erica Cruz. Hello. Welcome back to this week's episode of Chingona Revolution podcast. This is going to be a shorter episode because I'm currently in Mexico. I'm here for my good friend Liz's wedding, and I did have an episode planned for you all. I wanted to talk to you all about what to do when you've lost your spark. And I wrote some notes when I was on the plane, and I was really excited to record this episode. And I still am excited to record and share this episode with you all. But over the last 24 hours, there's been a lot of things that have occurred. The moment that, well, actually, first, let's start with the wedding. I'm so excited about Liz's wedding because I was with her on the trip where she connected with her partner, and they have been living together in Mexico City. And it's just been the most beautiful love story to witness. And now I get to celebrate the ceremony of her love, and I get to be in her wedding tomorrow. And I'm so excited to be in Mexico. I'm so excited to be here supporting one of my dearest friends. And this is a friend that has become a friend over the last couple of years. And it's so crazy how when you find aligned friendships, like when you follow your purpose and when you follow what it is that you should be doing, you're going to find people who are aligned with you. And it's going to feel like these are soul friendships, right? Just like there's soulmates, there's also soul friendships. And I truly believe that both Liz and Mariela, two of the people that I'm here with, obviously Liz is getting married, but Mariela's also in the wedding, and so am I. And it's just a beautiful moment that we all get to share together, and I'm so excited to be here. But when I was boarding the plane, I get a phone call, or actually I got a text message from my mom because one of my aunts had let her know that my paternal grandmother was not doing well. And the message that I received from my mom when I was on the plane was that my grandmother was in her final hours. And I thought my grandmother was in a different state, but it turns out that she was exactly where I was flying into. So we had plans of what we were going to do when we arrived in Mexico, but my plans changed, and I ended up going to go see my father and his mother, who was not doing well. And luckily I had seen her a few months before, but I hadn't seen her prior to that. I mean, it had been years. And I knew that I wanted to spend more time getting to know my last living grandmother. And I definitely made the efforts that I could. And she ended up passing away today. So I just got to see her yesterday. So the trip definitely took a little bit of a turn. My podcast episode for today has also just maybe won't have the spark I wanted it to have, but I still wanted to ensure that I got a podcast episode out for you all. And I still wanted to ensure that I shared something with you all. But I think my biggest takeaway from this whole experience is that, one, we can't really know, right, when things are going to happen, but divine timing is divine timing. What a coincidence that I ended up on a flight that got me into the city that my grandmother was in, and I didn't even know she was in that city. I thought she was in a different state. I thought she was in the state that I thought she was in her home state, the state that she's from, which is the state of Zacatecas. But it turns out they had moved her back to Guadalajara, and that's exactly where I was flying into. So I think there's definitely something to be said around divine timing and being in the right place at the right time. And there's also, the message of grief and how grief comes in waves. And there can be so many mixed emotions, and I've felt gratitude, but I've also felt sadness, and I've also felt some anger. It's been very interesting because just I'm a lot closer to my mom's side of the family than my dad. So, I mean, we're talking cousins I hadn't seen in 20 years. I got to see last night. So that's definitely taken an impact in how I've been feeling and in my thoughts about this trip so far. So, if I mean, obviously this is all very fresh. I'm sure I may have more lessons in the future, but I guess if I could say anything to anybody who's listening, it's that I mean, and we all logically know this, right? But we never know when somebody's last day will be. So do what you can when you can and let what you've done be enough because we can't go back and change the past. And I could feel myself wanting to get into like almost a shame cycle of like, oh, I should have done more. And I had to catch myself because it was a complicated situation. So, with that being said, let's get into the actual podcast. I wanted to talk about what do you do when you've lost your spark? And maybe as soon as I say that, you're like, oh, I need to hear this. But let me give you examples of what it's like to have lost your spark because maybe that specific phrase doesn't resonate with you, but maybe one of the examples that I have will resonate with you. So, let's say that maybe you were building your confidence at work and then you suddenly end up working with a company or a boss who ends up being really hard to work with. So maybe they're gaslighting you, maybe they're just really stressed out and they're pouring a lot of stress on you. Maybe they are just overall a toxic person to work with. And that situation can affect your confidence and affect the way that you're showing up at work. It can, maybe you're used to being this like top performer, or you were, again, like I mentioned, building your confidence at work. And then once you have an experience like this, it can really alter the way that you show up at work. Maybe you feel like you're walking on eggshells. Maybe you don't apply for promotions because you don't feel like you're doing that good. So it can happen in work situations. We can also lose our spark with content creation. I feel like that's definitely something that's happened with me because when I started my business, it was literally just me creating content on TikTok. And I was creating content just because it was fun to create content. But as time went on and I started to run a coaching business and have a team and all of these different things, I feel like at that moment, I then began to lose my spark when it came to content creation. And I feel like I'm working my way back towards that right now. And that's one of my goals for 2025 to create more content just for the joy of creating content. But especially for those of us who started on TikTok and we were used to getting a lot of views or a lot of likes. And then once that dips or the algorithm changes, it can be really easy to feel like you've lost your spark and lost your passion for it. Losing your spark can also happen when you are in an unloving relationship. So maybe you were typically a pretty confident individual, but if you ended up in a relationship with somebody who was narcissistic or somebody who was toxic or somebody that just was not compatible with you, it can be really easy to start to question your worth, to start to question your power, to start to question the value that you bring, and really to change the way that you see yourself. Amiga, I hope you're enjoying the show. We are going to get right back to today's episode, but I just had to drop in and check with you. How are you feeling? How are things going? If you find yourself frustrated or maybe shaming yourself because you have not taken the action that you wanted to take, maybe you are just tired of starting and stopping or overthinking or worrying about what your coworkers are going to think about you or your family members are going to think about you if you finally start that project that you've been wanting to start. I just want you to know that I see you. I feel you. I overthought starting my Instagram page for 2 years before I actually started it. So I get it. I totally understand. And if you find yourself in this position where you know that you want to make 2024 your year and you're ready to stop procrastinating and start taking action, then I invite you to Courage Driven Latina. Courage Driven Latina is my signature program where you will legit change your life in 90 days because we are going to help you take action on a courage project in 90 days. I also recently introduced the Courage Project paths, which I'm so excited about. So you essentially get to pick the path that you want to work on, and you can work on more than one path because the program is now 12 months, right? But we recommend one path at a time. And I'm so excited about these paths because we have a confidence courage project path. So if you want to speak up in your relationships or maybe speak up at work, this would be the perfect path for you. Or if you just want to establish more self-trust. The second path we have is the content creation courage project path. So this is perfect for you if you want to create an Instagram page, a TikTok account, or perhaps you are ready to launch your own podcast. We even have a whole podcast course inside of Courage Driven Latina. The third path is the career courage project path. So if you know that you want to be at the director level or the VP level, or maybe you're ready to change your job to a different job, then this would be the perfect path for you. Maybe you're like, you know what, entrepreneurship is cool, but it's not really for me. I really want to be a boss ass mommy. Then this is going to be the path for you. And last but not least, we have the Chingona CEO path. So if you know that you want to be an entrepreneur and you know you want to start your business, whether it's a coaching business or a physical business, if you want to sell a product, then this is the perfect path for you. Again, because this program is now 12 months, you can work on more than one path. Join the waitlist for Courage Driven Latina by going to the link down below in the show notes, because when you join the waitlist, you are going to be the first to know when we open doors, and you may even get some early access. So ensure that you join the waitlist. I cannot wait to work with you. We have some incredible women in this program, and the fact that it's now a year long, we've already seen so much transformation. I can't wait to work with you. Let's get back to the show, and don't forget to join the waitlist. Another big thing that has happened for people in my circle is experiencing a layoff. Maybe you finally landed your dream job and then you're laid off. That can totally affect your confidence. It can affect your spark. It can affect the way that you view yourself and the way that you show up in the world. And I want to validate that this happens, right? Life is never just going to be about you feeling amazing, about you always feeling confident. Life happens in cycles. And just like we have abundance, we also have lack. And just like we have confidence and our spark, we're also going to have self-doubt. But if there's anything I've learned during my spirituality journey and my self-development journey, it is that whenever we are in those lower points, whether it is in lack or whether it is in self-doubt, those are the moments that show us what it is that we need to work on. Those are the moments that give us the opportunity for growth. If you always had your spark, that would actually be unsustainable. We do need these moments and maybe situations, and as uncomfortable as they feel, those are the situations that catapult us forward. Notice, like, have you ever seen somebody go through a breakup and then after the breakup, they're immediately really sad about it. But then time goes by and then they go through this like amazing glow up, right? Maybe they start going to the gym, they start eating healthy, they just start taking better care of themselves. They really begin to love themselves. But before, they were just caught up in the relationship that they were not prioritizing themselves. Or like people that I've mentioned that have been laid off, when they've been laid off, they end up finding more amazing or more aligned jobs. But the thing is, they would have never walked away from the job if they had the choice. If they had the choice, they would have stayed. There's a lot of clients of mine who've ended up getting laid off and then they end up starting their own business after. And they've always wanted to start their own business, but they didn't have the courage to leave the job. So sometimes the universe, the light, the source, whatever it is that you believe in, God, whatever word you use, sometimes has to pull us out of situations in order to redirect us. And whenever we're talking about getting our spark back, I think this is really applicable. Like, and there's something to be learned from having lost our spark. And I think we do everything we can to avoid it. But if we knew the beauty that comes to the other side of losing your spark, I think we'd be willing to lose our spark so much more. I used the example earlier about lack and abundance. And, you know, we all want to live these abundant lives where we have a limitless supply of the things that we need. So like abundance of material goods, right? Abundance of food in your kitchen, abundance of money in your bank account so that you can take your children to do fun things and for childcare and to not worry about, you know, paying the mortgage, different things like that. We all want an abundance of love, an abundance of community, and an abundance of friendship, but we don't manifest from abundance. we actually manifest from lack. So what does that mean? If you had everything you ever wanted, you would never really be manifesting. There wouldn't be anything more for you to go get because you already have everything. But whenever you see somebody wearing a purse that you really like, or whenever you see somebody getting proposed to, or whenever you see somebody driving a car that you might like, or whenever you see somebody has a certain hobby or a skill, and then you think, oh, I don't have that, but I'd like that. That is lack teaching us what it is that we do want. And without that experience, we wouldn't be able to grow. We wouldn't know that we want something else. So, what matters more than anything is what you do with that lack. Do you look at that lack as like, oh man, I'm never going to be able to have that? Or are you looking at that lack as, ooh, this is something that I want? This is something I'm going to work towards. This is something I'm going to add to my vision board. And I think it's the same thing with losing our spark. When we lose our spark, it allows us, it's almost like, the slingshot analogy. I've talked about it before here on the podcast. But, a slingshot, in order for it to go forward, it needs to be pulled back to gain momentum. And that is what I feel happens whenever we lose our spark. Again, whether this is the spark of something that happened in the workplace or a relationship, or maybe with friendships, or maybe you were in the middle of learning a skill and you were improving and improving, and then you just suddenly got worse and worse. And part of growth, as we look at, I think it's the lotus flower. It's a different type of flower. It starts with a D. The lotus flower is the one that grows from the mud. So beautiful things can come from the mud. But I've seen time lapses of it where as it's beginning to grow, it first compresses and then it grows, and then compresses and then it grows more. So when we quote unquote lose our spark, I really do think it's just that moment when we're taking a step back to redirect where we're going. And I think the best way to get there is, rather than avoiding losing the sparks and rather than avoiding ever going through a low vibrational moment or going through like a self-doubt moment, rather than avoiding that, which is naturally what humans do, how can we embrace it? And how can we see what is it that's teaching us? So here's what I wrote when I was on the plane, when I was thinking about this podcast episode. So how is it that we get our spark back? And we do this simply, it sounds very simple. We do this by connecting back to ourselves, by remembering and realizing that those moments do not define us, whether it was a relationship or a job. And that was just one moment in time. And our identity is so much bigger than that moment, right? Like who you are as a person is so much more than one job that you had. Who you are as a person is so much more than one relationship. And maybe this moment has taught us that we're playing small, right? Maybe if you were laid off from a job, what you can learn from it is that that was not the right job for you. You were either underpaid, or maybe you needed to go start your own business, or maybe you needed to go apply for a promotion or go to a different industry. There's so many things that we don't know, but how can we believe that everything that's happening is happening for our greater good, even if in that moment it doesn't feel good? Right? When you're going through a breakup, it does not feel good. But how do you feel after? You feel freaking liberated. Being laid off does not feel good. But what happens after you get a job that pays you 40% more and is actually aligned with your purpose and feels fulfilling, and you feel like you're not wasting your life? That feels freaking good. So how is it that you can go through it? Not around it, not avoiding it, because the thing is, the universe is going to keep giving us lessons. And unless we learn the lesson, it's going to keep throwing us the same lesson over and over. So until we have been able to look at a challenge and learn the lesson from it, then will we be able to move on. If not, the universe is going to keep throwing the same challenge at you. How many of us have not ended up dating like the same type of person, right? Like maybe you're just dating the same type of person and you keep coming across the same issues over and over. And you're like, oh my gosh, all these men, all these women, all these, like, the person I'm dating are the same. But no, what if it's literally you calling the experiences that you need to help yourself advance? Because our soul is really intelligent, right? Like our higher self is very intelligent. It's going to call in experiences that are going to make us work on the things that we need to work on so that we can advance. And when I say advance, I mean like advance our consciousness so we can grow wiser, so we can just become more grounded people, more elevated from a consciousness level. So when you don't learn the lesson, it's almost like if you are working on your patience and you just keep losing your patience every time, you're going to keep getting more and more situations and circumstances and people in your life who are going to keep testing your patience, right? If you're already feeling super impatient, when you get on the freeway, it's going to be stopped. You are going to get every red light. And I know that you're probably sitting there like, damn, that's so happened to me. That one time that I felt this way, or when I was working on this thing, the experiences keep popping up. So in these moments when we have lost our spark, what we need to do is we need to go through the pain. We need to figure out, what is it that this is teaching us, and how can I get to the other side? Not how can I avoid this at all costs, because I don't want to feel lack. I don't want to feel self-doubt. I don't want to feel crappy or insecure. We're going to feel this way at some point or another. So somebody needed to hear this. If you have lost your spark, I want you to know that you didn't lose it. It's there. It's just how you're feeling in this moment is nothing more than a moment in time. And just like the, amazing moments don't last forever, neither do the moments when we feel like we've lost our spark. And that spark is in you. It's just about reconnecting with it. And the best way that we can reconnect with it is reconnecting with ourselves and reconnecting with our value and doing the work and asking ourselves, what is this experience teaching me? That is one of the most powerful questions you can ask, because there's always something to be learned from our challenges. Okay, y'all, I'm going to go get ready because we're going to have dinner. And tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon is Liz's wedding. So I have only a few more minutes to get ready, but I'm glad I recorded this podcast episode. Somebody needed to hear it. As always, thank you for listening. Please, if you could support this podcast by either sharing it with somebody, taking a screenshot of it, sharing it on social media, making sure you tag me or the podcast. The podcast has an Instagram too. It's just Chingona Revolution. But if you can leave a review or rate the podcast, that would be amazing. That is how podcasts grow. Thank you all so much for hanging with me. And I'm wishing you the most abundant and growthful. Is that even a word? And a 2025 full of growth. There we go. We'll just say that. Okay, see you all next week. Thank you so much for joining me this week. Make sure to visit theericacruz.com. That's Erica with a K, where you can subscribe to the show so you'll never miss an episode. You can help this podcast grow by supporting me with an Apple Podcast rate and review. If you took anything away from this episode, I invite you to take a screenshot and share it on social media so that your favorite badass Latinas can also check it out. Be sure to tag me at the Erica Cruz. That's Erica with a K, because you know I want to see it. If you're ready to join the revolution and be a part of the Courage Driven Latina community, visit couragedrivenlatina.com to get more information and join the waitlist. Thanks again, and I'll see you next week.